What if I told you that potentially one of the greatest chess players in history was virtually unknown? And no, it's not your 11-year-old relative who uses pocket stockfish. This is a video about Sultan Khan, who between the years of 1929 and 1933 took on some of the world's best players and defeated them. Sultan Khan was born in 1903 in modern-day Pakistan. He learned Indian chess, which is different than the chess we know, at the age of 9, and by the age of 21, he was the best player in the region. At that point, a wealthy chess patron named Colonel Nawab Sur Umar Hayat Khan, who we will call Sur Umar for short, took him under his wing and helped him travel to London to take on the world's best players. In 1928, Sultan Khan won the Indian National Championship. In 1929, he traveled to London for the first time and did not have a good result. He finished second to last place, but the two people above him, William Winter and Frederick Yates, helped him train, and a few months later, he won the British National Championship. In May of 1930, Sultan Khan returned back to London and took on Jose Capablanca, Alexander Alekhine, Akiba Rubeinstein, Saloflor, and many of the other greats. Let's take a look at 3 amazing games that he played, and then after that, we will talk about the epilogue of the story. Before we jump into it, I just want to say, Sultan Khan could not read or write. He could not read chess text. All the training that he did was with his rivals. That's what makes this story absolutely fascinating. So we're going to kick things off with this game that Sultan Khan played against Hermanis Karlovich Mattison. And this is a chess master, doesn't have too rich of a history, but still a great game. And Sultan Khan liked to play a lot of this d4 knight f3 stuff. With black, he liked the Caro-Kann. He actually, against the queen's pawn, liked a lot of setups with the bishop on b7. Now, but here, he plays e3. He develops his bishop and his knight. And now he doesn't even, he doesn't follow kind of the basic opening protocol of short castle and just getting the pieces developed. He just goes immediately to town with this move, knight to e5. Now, if you dominate the two central squares in any given position, you're going to have success. And so by occupying that square and that square, it allows him to exert pressure on his opponent by playing this move f4. Now, this is called the Stonewall structure. Now, Sultan Khan probably didn't go into this game going, I'm going to play the Stonewall structure. Rather, he just liked having positional binds on his opponents. Castles, and now he plays queen to f3. He doesn't wait to castle. Instead, he again wins control over the center square and transfers his queen to kind of create a target on that square, right? That's exactly what he does. Now, Mattison gets out of the way with his knight and plays this move f5, kind of closing down this bishop, and he says, all right, man, you're not going to be able to attack me. But knight to f3. Another piece is going to go join the party. Knight to g5 would be devastating on the next move, attacking both h7 and e6. So for that reason, black goes back to at least safeguard the h7 square. We get bishop to d2, just developing that piece. Bishop to a6. Great move by Mattison. He understands that, he needs to trade off some of white's powerful attacking pieces, and this bishop could be useful in the future. But, well, rook to g1. And Sultan Khan makes his intentions very clear. He has no plans of castling on this side, and he wants to play g4. The benefit here for white's position is the fact that the center is so locked. A closed center will benefit a player if you want to launch an attack. We get bishop takes. Now he takes with the c-pawn. Why would he take with the c-pawn? Well, 2 reasons. Now this knight will never be able to go to e4. So again, he's winning the fight for the 2 central squares. He also can play rook c1, so he will have an open file for his rook. All right, queen e8, and king to e2. No plans to castle. He puts his king behind the wall of pawns, and his king's completely safe. And also, he played a modified pawn cloud, which obviously is always good. Knight d7, and now queen h4. We are ready at some moment to play this move g4. Could have arguably played it in this position, but queen h4, c5, and bishop c3. We see him completely closing down the center. He's not taking, destabilizing his knight on e5. He's keeping everything nice and compact. Black plays takes. He takes with the bishop. Knight out to c5, and finally we have the move g4. And now it's about to be a flurry, so we get bishop takes knight. He takes back with the knight. He doesn't want to take back with the bishop and lose this pawn, so he takes. And there's a big attack coming on the g7 square. Now you could say, well, maybe black didn't have to make all those trades. Like, for example, in this position, maybe black could have just played like rook c8 and gf5, ef5 and said, all right, maybe there's nothing here, but there is. There's always going to be something. In fact, it's a very dangerous position for black. Defending here is super tricky. Like, you have to take and then make sure that g7 is guarded, which is just not very natural. Like, normally you're thinking to take back, right? And in the game, that's exactly what happened. I mean, there was a massive trade, but because the threat of rook takes g7 is so strong, black played the move g6 and just rook g1, and black resigned. Black just straight up resigned the game. A very, a highly imaginative game is what I wanted to kind of show you first. You say, why would black resign? I don't understand. Well, what are you going to do? For example, if queen f7, right? I'm going to go queen h6. You can't stop this. My threat is rook takes, pawn takes, mate. And you can't even take with the queen, because then I'm going to take, mate. There's nothing black can do. I mean, you can play like e5, and then I'm going to take. You haven't slowed down my attack in the slightest. So where was black's mistake? Well, black made some mistake probably around here, allowing this attack for white to kind of blossom and develop. Most likely, black had to play a move like bishop c5 and realize that the bishop was really the dangerous piece locked behind white's pieces. And then if white kind of chugged on forward with g4, black would have taken. And for example, if white tries to play knight, like let's say pawn takes d4 here, trying to keep it all together, you realize the knight is not the piece required in the attack. It's actually the bishop. So even if now black decided to do this, and even take, this is very different because black guards and you just don't really get the same thing. I mean, I'm going to trade queens with you, for example. Black had to realize that Sultan Khan's bishop was lurking behind everything and play the move bishop to c5. But this is the, early 20th century chess. I mean, early 20th, early 19th century, late 19th century chess, it's craziness. I mean, it's like, these guys are playing like absolute lunatics trying to crush each other. But there's still a lot of, really nice positional games. But speaking of lunatics, actually, we're going to take a look at another game with Mir Sultan Khan. This was against Frank Marshall. Frank Marshall, one of the greatest American players of all time. Not Bobby Fischer level, but the story about this game, and this is the benefit of sticking around in a GothamChess video, is that you never know what I'll drop. Well, first of all, I want to tell you you're amazing, as always. Apparently in this game, played at like a super elite tournament, a lot of top players around. Tartakower wrote about it in his memoir of this event, or his recap of this event, and he said that Frank Marshall was drinking pineapple juice, except it wasn't pineapple juice. He was super drunk, he was banging out all his moves, and yelling at Sultan Khan during this game. So just imagine that at an elite level tournament. Magnus Carlsen just, takes a swig. I bet you like that. Anyway, Sultan Khan plays d4 and brings his queen out. So clearly, the man is not an openings book, but still was able to compete with these top guys. Knight back to c6, queen to e3, and he just tries to develop his pieces casually and castle queenside. Now, Frank Marshall was a confrontational guy. So he played the move d5. He's trying to punish white's setup. And white's setup isn't very good. This is probably the best way to punish it. Now, all of a sudden, it is black who has a lead in development, which is non-standard. Sultan Khan plays knight to e2. It's the only way to optimize his development. Bishop to g4, and now knight to f4, attacking the queen. Queen goes back to d7. Now Sultan Khan plays f3. He says, why'd you bring your bishop out here? I don't understand. Well, what are you doing here? What is this? Well, Frank Marshall here plays the brilliant move, long castles. Just go ahead and take my bishop. If you do take my bishop, I'm going to hit you with bishop to h4 check. Then I'm going to hit you with king to d1 because this is coming, right? This is coming, right? You got to go king d1. I'm going to go here. And then if you go queen to d3 trying to get a queen trade, I'm going to take with check. And then if you block, I'm going to sacrifice because I don't want to lose my queen. And then if you take like this, I'm going to play queen takes f4. And then if you fork me, I'm going to detonate kaboom. Kaboom, check, and you're going to lose both rooks. And if you say, did he really see all that? Yes. Frank Marshall was a genius attacker. Yes. When Frank Marshall played Long Castle, of course he saw that 6-move combination. This guy is one of the most creative attacking players of the 20th century. I'm not joking. I mean, I didn't ask the guy. I didn't text him in the afterlife like, hey man, what's up? Dude, but yes, of course. And the thing is, this was very sobering defense. No pun intended, given that Frank Marshall was apparently drinking during this game. Very sobering defense that Frank Marshall just wanted to absolutely detonate, a brilliancy and add it to his game collection. But Mir Sultan Khan says, all right, let me call your bluff. Pawn takes bishop. Now that my king is out of the way, I don't have to worry about bishop to h4 check anymore. So black plays bishop to b4, and here there's only one move that holds for white, only one move, and he finds it. Queen back to f2, because you need to guard your bishop, and you need to guard back rank, and you need to guard your knight. It's the only move. Frank Marshall plays bishop c5, hoping for takes. This is why you always look for checks. Kabam! Takes, kabam! And you are mated. You are mated, ladies and gentlemen. So that's what he was hoping for. Now we're talking about, Mir Sultan Khan here. Queen to f3. Holds everything. There's no mate because the queen is covering the back rank. So rook to e3. Yes, you still can't take, because if you take, check. And it's mate. I'm going to mate you on the back rank. So don't take. Queen to d5. Once again, in this position, one of the only ways, in fact, I think it's the only way to win the game. He looks and finds all of the tactics, all of the open lines, and he plays queen to d5. And the reason this move is so good is that if black takes, take, you still cannot take the rook, but you play bishop c4. Now 2 rooks are hanging, and that is a problem because your rook is guarded. That's the major point. Did he see that? Of course. That's why he played it. Again, I didn't ask him. All right. Text messages to the afterlife are very expensive, but, yes, of course. Of course he saw that, which is why Frank Marshall played queen e7. Now the queen is under attack, and this is guarded, and that's guarded. And here we have queen to f5 check. King to b8, and the interposing move. Knight back to d3, and all of a sudden we have problems. When you are up material and under attack, you want to nip that attack in the bud, right? You want to train as many pieces of that attack as possible. Queens, rooks, bishops, and now we are guaranteed simplification. This is hanging, and too much stuff is hanging. Great little maneuver there. Takes. Black doesn't have enough. Knight to d4, queen h7. Still, Frank Marshall was kind of trying to swing in here with the pieces, but I think at this point, the pineapple juice was simply too potent. Queen came back to e4 to simplify. Nice little move here, repelling the enemy knight from ever getting forward. And in this position, after queen e6, Frank Marshall played a move and resigned. Now, that's pretty boss. Oh, that's how you know you've really defeated someone, where they've actually played a move, and on your turn, they have decided they've had enough. Not after you make a move, but on your turn thinking, they're like, you know what, this is stupid. Why am I doing this? So you might say, well, why would you show this game? Well, the thing is, a lot of people would have succumbed to Frank Marshall. And at the same time, this is the second professional year that Sultan Khan is playing. So first of all, he shows genius attacking play. Now he shows very creative and kind of sobering defensive play. And now, if you stuck around like 16, 15 minutes into this video, you will be rewarded, because here's a game of Sultan Khan versus Jose Capablanca. This is from 1930 Hastings, and a couple of years prior, Capablanca was the world champion. In fact, he dethroned Lasker, who had the world championship longer than any other player in history. So Capablanca knew how to put pieces on squares. He was considered one of the most technical players of all time, if not the most, given who he was playing against. And he lost to, he lost his world championship crown to Alekhine, who also was one of the greatest of the 20th century. So knight to f3, knight to f6, and the players get out to just a very standard-looking Queen's Indian defense. Now here, Sultan Khan plays a move that at the time wasn't super popular, a3. Why? Bishop to b4. You know your opponent wants to go there, so don't let him do it. d5, takes, simple development. And you see kind of this time, Sultan Khan, he's not going for some stonewall, right? He's trying to play kind of more principled chess. Capablanca plays knight to e4. It's a very strong move, planting the knight there, supported by the bishop and the pawn, and asking white what you want to do here. Bishop f4. It's kind of a weird move. I mean, why would you? Well, here's why. Knight d7. Now queen c2. And essentially, you're saying, I don't want to simplify. I want to take advantage of the fact that you've kind of planted that knight there. It's going to be a target, and behind that is a nice, juicy targeting of your king. This move forces Capablanca to play the move f5. Which actually, on a surface, this looks really nice. It looks like, oh, these pawns are clamping down the center. But it's not quite the same. It's not quite the same. Strategically here, white has some advantage and immediately goes for that pawn on c7. Black plays bishop d6 and offers a trade of pieces. Now, what do you take with? Do you take with the bishop or the knight? So, Sultan Khan decides to trade knight for bishop. And Capablanca, known as, again, one of the better technical players, positional players, gives away the bishop pair, gives himself doubled isolated pawns in the center, but he does get something for it, and it's a very dynamic game, right? He's got this kind of open file. White center is really blocked, not a lot of movement here. So we get h4. Sultan Khan, baby. I mean, we see this all the time, modern day, these super GMs playing h4. This man just busts out the move h4. He's not a big fan of castling. He doesn't need to castle. He makes the rules. Why h4? Well, to be honest, g5 was going to happen. Like, if white castles, there's some positions black might pop off with g5. Not this specific position, but there are many situations, you know, and by the way, not this specific position, because you would take this knight, and then if this, you would take on f5, so there's tactical reasons, but he also just realized that this is going to be his only real way to fight for advantage, because he's not winning the central battle, he's not really winning the queenside battle either, so he redirects the play and the focus to another side of the board. Capablanca plays rook c8, we get queen b3, targeting the pawn and the king. Queen to e7, and knight d2 drops the knight back, volunteers a trade, and even sacrifices the right to castle. But Capablanca didn't like this, actually. He wanted to reinforce, so we get knight takes. Now f takes, bishop back to e2. So what the heck is going on? Very unclear who has a better position. You could argue white is better, because white has the two bishops. White has a bit more obvious of a target, you know, like two obvious targets. I don't know. Very tough to say. Rook to c6, oh geez, and g5. I mean, only Sultan Khan can play like this against Capablanca, right? There is a degree of respect that comes with knowing the other top players, but he doesn't even do this to take the pawn with check. He does this to play bishop to g4 and activate his bishop in a very creative way, because he knows he's not going to activate it over here. Even if you attack the rook moves, right? So rook c1 check was played here. King to d2, rook to c2, and now we have the position on the thumbnail. Sultan Khan sacrifices his queen for the two rooks. Now, two rooks are better than a queen if and only if the enemy queen is completely restricted, okay? Rooks need to coordinate to be good. Separated, they're garbage, especially against the queen, who will hunt them down, find them, beat them, you know, to an inch within their life, and then take all their money. So the rooks need to be together, right? So queen to c7, the king goes back to d2, queen c4, bishop e2, queen b3, rook b1. So now the queen has been thwarted. The queen's not going to do any damage here. So we get rook c1 and rook c3, and now b4. Why b4? This is the best coordination of a position. And if you play b5, that queen's trapped. If you play b5, the queen is trapped. So the queen gets out. Rook c1, a6, and now rook g1. So Sultan Khan baits his opponent into playing a pawn move and then says, all right, I'm going to go in this way now. You've weakened your pawns enough that now maybe I can take them in the future. And I still have this target. So, queen back to a4, rook back to c1, they repeat. Now he says, no repetition for me, h5. Let's just make progress. Simple, easy, improving moves. Not every move has to do something drastic. Rook 1, c2, queen h3, king c1. Let me hide my king on b2, slowly improving my position. My king is better there. I don't want it in the center of the board anymore. Queen to h3, rook to c1. Why? What is he doing? Oh. He wants to guard the back rank. He wants to guard the second rank. And now he's going to start expanding on this side of the board. Queen h4, king a3. Slowly squeezing one of the greatest players of that generation to death. Queen back to h3, bishop to g3, queen f5. Now we have some targets that Capablanca can go after with bishop h4. g6, and now a super important moment. Do you take or do you push? He decides to push, isolating that pawn for the future endgame. Maybe that pawn will be useful. Queen goes back to d7, b5, a5. So we've now isolated two of black's major targets. We go bishop g3, we remind black that that is also a target. Queen f5, bishop f4, little bit of shuffling, and now he brings his king all the way back to the back rank. Queen continues to shuffle, king continues to shuffle, and finally, after a little bit more shuffling, he goes, I've had enough. Rook g1. Bishop back to c8, and now the rook to c6. You say, why would he do that? Why would he allow the rook to come there? There's nothing else you could do. Because now bishop to g4. You say, well, why couldn't he have done it, like, for example, here? Like, For example, in this position, why couldn't he have played rook g1? He could have. He could have. But he was shy. He was, you know, sometimes you hesitate a little bit. So he hesitated. Now he plays, threatens bishop g4, makes Capablanca move the bishop back, infiltrates with the rook. Remember a long time ago that a-pawn moved up 1 square? Do you guys remember that? When that a-pawn moved up 1, and now Sultan Khan made it move up a second time? Yeah, that was to isolate the weaknesses. And now, at some point, in a few moves, we will have the first breaking point in the position, which is when white has infiltrated successfully. They shuffle a little bit. He guards everything. Maybe he was just savoring the moment. Queen takes, king to d2. The king comes back to guard. And now, everything falls apart. Queen h5, rook takes b6. King moves to e7, rook b7. The pawn pushes. Bishop moves in. Everything is patrolled. Queen h3. And the final move of the game, rook to b8. And in this game, Capablanca didn't even get close to harming Sultan Khan. This was not a complex game. This was a which snake constricts. It was a snake wrapping itself around its prey and suffocating it. This rook is going to move out of the way, maybe to go to this pawn, maybe to sacrifice itself, and the b-pawn will promote. I've never seen a game quite like this. And I wanted to end the video with it because it's obviously a statement game. I mean, Capablanca was world champion just years prior. He was one of the elite players throughout this time. And this is just one of many victories and close matches that Sultan Khan had during his career of about 4 years. Kind of insane. When you think about the circumstances, the fact that he was unable to read or write, he was unable to read texts, in magazines and study games and things like that. He didn't have an opening repertoire. Many of his games, as you see, no opening repertoire at all. And potentially the craziest kind of epilogue to all of this is that after this, in 1933, he returned back to India. In 1935, he played 1 match locally against the player where he won every game and drew once, and then nobody heard from him again. Some years later, in 1944, Sir Umar passed away, and Sultan Khan was actually quoted as saying later on in his life that he would never teach his children chess, maybe just as a hobby, but he would never teach them chess, and he wanted them to do something more productive with their lives. It was reported that Sultan Khan was quite miserable traveling abroad, which obviously makes sense, given, it was the 1930s. He was frequently ill when he traveled, suffering from all sorts of illnesses, frequently showing up to boards with his neck wrapped in bandages. But what a story. I mean, learning the chess we all know at 21, after winning, the Indian chess championships, and then a 4-year career where he would show up in London, wreak havoc, beat people, and go home. Unbelievable. He's written about by so many different people. Feel free to, dive into a deeper read with some of the articles and some of the quoted text of some of the greatest players of that generation. And I just wanted to make this video because it's a very fascinating story. So, on that note, as always, thank you for watching. If you are returning, welcome back. If you're brand new, welcome. Got a lot of playlists, openings, middle games, end games, puzzle solving for you to check out. I've got courses. Link is in the description, and there's something I haven't covered, do leave a comment. I do read them, and I'll cover that in the future. I'll see you in the next video.